But anywho, you know what's a joke that I've seen on my radar? The fact that in Florida, Ron DeSantis is saying that slaves benefited. People benefited from slavery.
Yeah.
Y'all seen that? Because I didn't want to miss that. And that's happening. It's real.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Mhm.
And
I mean, in his defense, one side of my family's entire last name are Fisher, so therefore, hey, I mean, where did they learn how to fish? What are you doing that? No.
see, there you go. Don't be starting because I think everybody on the internet ain't funny. Okay, Dan from the internet. So,
damn, you just really own Dan big time.
I deserved it.
Ron DeSantis, he's defending the new Florida curriculum that he created or wants to put in place. He was speaking in an event to reporters in Utah, where he defended a new set of academic standards in his state, Florida, that will require middle schools to teach that enslaved people developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. And we know that since he stated that, it had everybody, well, not everybody, but Black folks, we were like, now why would you say now it benefited? You see how they want to flip it? And it's because this is the thing. People like Ron DeSantis and those Republicans, like I said, they will reach with the shortest arms and they will say this is law, and all of their backwoods followers with no health insurance but who just want to bleed red, what they're going to do is they're going to believe this. They're going to say whatever. They're not going to look for the research. It's because Ron DeSantis said it and he is their God right now, and whatever he says goes. And so if he said that slaves benefited or enslaved people benefited from slavery because they learned things, this is it. But they do not want to put in the books about the torture, what happened to enslaved people when enslaved people were free, what happened then, whose blood was on the hands of white folks. They don't want to say any of those things, how whole communities were bombed. They don't want to talk about those things. They don't want to put that in history, but they want to cover up and beautify slavery. And they do not want to hold their grandparents, because it's just like 2 generations removed. They don't want to hold those people accountable. They do not want to be held accountable. You got to uphold white law, white supremacy, white nationalism, white talking points. And I don't think I would ever, and see, being in the state, I'm from Florida, and understanding, and if I ever had to learn that, if that was put into my head as a young child, already a product of immigrants, and that would be put in my head that Haitians are allergic to slavery. Okay, if you guys don't know that already, I am a product of Haitian immigrants. If that was put into my head and I brought that to my daddy, he would literally uproot us from Florida and take us somewhere else, because that's not a teaching that you want your Black child to be taught. They don't even want them to read about the positives or anything else, like how Ruby Bridges desegregated this, the air. They don't want that, and they don't want that story in there, but they want to just give lies.
It wouldn't surprise me if exactly what you said isn't the end goal, on a broader level. I mean, Florida is already doing that to families with trans kids, basically uprooting their lives and forcing them to leave. Wouldn't surprise me if the end goal is that get any sort of marginalized group that Ron DeSantis views as woke out of the state,
He doubled and tripled down when he was being interviewed about this. He was like, "Oh, well, I'm just saying, what if someone became a blacksmith or something?" I was like, "And then what? Do you think there was a retirement age for slaves?
Right.
Do you think at a certain point they're like, well, now to use these skills that I've learned thanks to the plantation owners or whatever?" And this is, by the way, on the heels of him doing that ad this week. By the way, he was this ad was this week or the week before when that actual fascist commercial came out. Like,
what about all the slaves who died before the end of slavery? Even going by his thinking process, a lot of people died before they got to that point where they could use their skills.
They already had skills where they were. Okay, right. That's what helped them live. That's how they grow their resources. They already had skills. They were already living lives before they were taken and brought here. So this is the logic is so dumb. It's so stupid. And this is how they this is how they gave us Thanksgiving too. I mean, we celebrate Thanksgiving. We didn't know what the real meaning or what was behind it or how abusive and bloody it was to Native American. Like we didn't know, we didn't know any of this. Like, so this is look how they taught us that. And we just been walking around here celebrating while people, are suffering and hurting as we celebrate. So I can't stand behind this. And I know a lot of us can't. But just knowing that this is Ron DeSantis. This man is very powerful right now. And a lot of people follow and eat everything he says. It's dumb. It really, there is nothing that can prove his point for real. It hurts people. It's very abusive. It's misinformation. But there's so many people who just, as long as it's coming from a Republican who can possibly be their leader, they will, this is Bible to them. This is evangelical word. This is what they will abide by. And this is what they will continue to push on their platforms too. Some people that follow them have huge platforms on TikTok, on whatever, and they will push these talking points. And this is how people will look at Black folks. And if I say, how I'm a marginalized person, they're going to say, well, you benefited from being here because your people wouldn't have. And it's just like, now I got to fight in the streets. Now I got to fight Sally and everybody at Target. Okay. And I don't want to do that. So, but it's causing more division. It'll cause more division and those kind of things. So
it's genuinely sickening. I mean, it's like this is the quintessential example of whitewashing American history. But Ron DeSantis, like, he may be losing in the presidential election, but he's still, more so perhaps than any other governor in the country, is able to lower the bar. Like, things that were not touchable by the GOP because they would be nuclear. You don't want to go here. He went there and he got it to be acceptable. I mean, this is the same person who got the Democratic Party voters, at least according to one poll, to support the Don't Say Gay bill, right? So him doing this, he is able to market this in a way to make it acceptable. And once you open the door to saying, oh, well, there were some quote unquote benefits to slavery, what else will you be willing to believe? It's just the beginning. I mean, and again, remember earlier this year, he banned an African-American AP studies course too. So it's sickening, but at the same time, the fact that none of us are shocked by this probably is also what makes it really bad, because that's where we're at.
Yeah. It's on brand for him, for real, because he has been attacking education in Florida, in his state, and he's making sure that he goes first for how Black people are seen and are represented here in America, and how their history is represented. That's what he's going for first, and also how white people are viewed in America, and to uphold the lies and the values of white folks, and how they have made America what it is, by the bootstraps, America the great, all America the beautiful. It's that make America great on steroids logic that he's pushing. And it's to push out anything that has to do with Black people asking for reparations or telling their story. And we don't even get our story told. We get it like how they want to talk about, how they, when you were in school, what you learned was probably Martin Luther King and how, we aren't seen by the color of our skin, that whole thing. That's all you learned. But there was so much more to Martin Luther King and his story, but they couldn't give you all of that. They don't want to make it, because what it makes it look like is a rebellious person, against the system, a radical. And they needed to show that he was somebody who was for all people. And if they showed any of his other talking points or any of his other speeches, it would go beyond how white people wanted to paint him for us. I learned Martin Luther King from how they taught me in school. But then I went to Florida A&M University, the #1 HBCU in the nation. Oh, and baby, they taught me. They had me read that book called The Lies My Teacher Told Me by Zimmerman, and it refreshed my mind, okay? It told me everything I needed to know, and how I was taught things to suppress and to minimize how people who look like me and their history in this country. So, yeah.
I just gotta say, I totally relate to that. Like, when you were mentioning how Florida is protecting like all these different like aspects of white patriarchy, white supremacy, etc. It harkened back to this explicit bill, like one of the first ones Ron DeSantis passed to get on the map this cycle, to say that, you know, anything that could possibly, basically it was targeting white fragility, is like we on the left we call it, but like anything that could possibly cause a white student to feel uncomfortable because they feel guilty for what they're being taught or whatever. Like, it's just like not allowed to be in the classroom. You're discouraging it from the classroom. And like, even I consider myself relatively lucky, gotten to like the Californian side of like the educational system. But the only reason I learned about how the reason why California has the gun laws that Republicans complain about all the time is because Ronald Reagan was afraid of the fact that the Black Panthers were using those gun laws to protest at the Capitol. Like, if it wasn't from the fact that my parents were from Oakland, and so the Black Panthers is just like something we talked about like at home, because that wasn't taught in schools. But knowing that history and knowing that Republican hero Ronald Reagan passed the assault weapons ban in California because of the Black Panthers and the threat of the Black Panthers protesting with their guns, when white folks in the Klan protesting with their guns down in Orange County was A-okay for every governor up to and including Ronald Reagan. Like, that is history that unlocks things for people. And it goes back to why they don't want to teach it. That's why they won't even teach it in California public schools, all right? Because that's some way too real shit. And that's like, America's full of so many of those stories, like the internment of Japanese folks, the just constant mistreating and like erasure of indigenous people, especially in the context of Oppenheimer that just aired recently. Like, there's so many of these moments in American history that pretty much the only conclusion to go to is like, yeah, you know, America, you can make it better. Like, you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, you can get rich really quickly.
It's
but
a melting
on
pot.
a lot of blood, on the backs of a lot of blood, and there continues to be a lot of blood.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, Rebecca, earlier, like, if you don't massage and create a public that is sort of okay with that, if you don't create this layers that like folks like us who are trying to break through that have to fight through these, like the foundation that's being made by laws in Florida. And even you have the College Board, which is supposed to be a capital L liberal like organization, changing their African American studies course that is taught to high school students across the country to make sure it complies with Florida's laws, because at the end of the day, they're a business. Like, this has ripple effects for the entire country for what we know. And like, we can't undo that kind of purposeful, systemic, like state-led, top-down, like unlearning. And so it's really important to highlight.
And he's going for presidency. And you know,
good thing he sucks.
And that too.
He's deeply unlikely.
Yeah, he has no chance.
And I see that. It's lower.
But Trump can take this exact same like framework.
Yeah.
Any Republican can.
Yeah.
And you know it's capable, and then he's gonna just stamp and said he came up with it first. You know, he's like Soldier Boy. He did it first. That's what he likes to do. He likes to say that often. But
I think that's the first time anyone's ever said Trump is like Soldier Boy.
That sentence out loud.
You can say he always says he did it first, right?
Never forget Trump said he invented priming the pump, as in like the John Maynard Keynes thing from the 1930s. He's like priming the pump, which I came up with, by the way. I was like, this guy
lies.
He just
that man lies.
Let your nuts hang, Mr. Trump. Let's go.
But no, it's real scary though. It's people down there who, are not calling it DeSantis County anymore. They're calling it DeSantis Country. These are the type of people who will, for the next 4 years, believe that he will be president. They'll move in that. They'll walk in that. There are some even people in the education system who love that he is doing this because they think that it's better to not be so harsh on the children, showing children different types of movies or different types of teachings, having them read books that mention slavery in a way where it puts like I said, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts, it highlights and has kids going home saying, now mama, was this us? Did we do this? And it's like a lot of parents are offended by that. But we have to talk about, if we're going to talk about him, we should. I want to say we have to, but they're not. But we should be talking about this because if we're going to talk about America and we're going to talk about all of its layers, we have to talk about the real history, right? And we have to mention that. So if we don't mention that, how can we ever get to at least somewhere where where we can be together in that white people and black folks standing together in that Martin Luther King way that white folks want us to be. We can't get there if we're not telling the truth. It's just nothing but lies. And now we have platforms where we can, we can come on and tell our own stories. And I want it to be for our education system to at least, it's like we're going back in time. Every time we reach somewhere, like at least I had something. I didn't have enough. I didn't have much, but we had Martin Luther King's teaching. They weren't going to teach us about Malcolm X, but they were going to teach us about Rosa Parks. They weren't going to teach us about like all these other people who they considered to be radical, like Billie Holiday. They didn't want us to really go in to what the story was with Billie Holiday. They were just going to say she was a black jazz singer. They don't want us to know exactly their history or how America played a part in attacking them and literally the feds watching them, making sure they put fear into them. They don't want us to know any of these things. And they want us to look at like you said, the Black Panthers. I've always thought they were bad people when I was younger. They were terrible. They didn't do anything for the community, nothing, because that's what I was taught to believe. But in reality,
feeding programs.
Right. They were feeding people in communities and children and making sure everybody was okay and teaching people how to protect themselves from the abuse of what was going on with law enforcement, with the government. They were stepping in when America was not. So, there's a lot of teaching that they don't want to teach us, but at least don't take away what they have already. Now you're literally lying. You're saying that they benefited, and as if they were feral people that you guys picked up and in a country with didn't have any knowledge, and that's what I don't like. They didn't have any talent or task or things that they already knew how to do. They already knew how to do these things. That's why I went and got them. Okay, strong, resourceful, all of that, because y'all couldn't do it yourself over here. That's why y'all had y'all black women feeding your children. Okay, black breast. It didn't make it make sense. So it was you that benefited from slaves. It was your property that was well kept up from slaves. It was your household that stayed together from slaves. It was your business that wasn't even your business idea that was created by slaves, enslaved people. So stop playing. It's a lot. Go ahead.
Really fast. I just want to there's one defense that I saw someone make of the policy going, well, let's take the example of Frederick Douglass. If it wasn't for Frederick Douglass's slave master's mistress, Frederick Douglass wouldn't learn how to read. And I'm like, oh, wow.
I saw that one.
Damn, that's brazy.
Wow.
The only way to learn how to read back in the 19th century was to get a slave master's mistress to do so. You couldn't just, be freed and not face getting beaten or whipped to death all the time and just learn how to read. And even if you read Frederick Douglass's own writings on this, it wasn't the mistress teaching him the ABCs that went oh, I'm going to be a black intellectual, I'm going to go to Europe and back and learn all these different things. It was the fact that when the master found out, the mistress was about to be punished and he was about to be punished, because something along the lines of the master saying, the reason we don't want black people to be informed, which resonates very much right now in the context of these book bans, because it's not just black people, it's just everyone. The reason we don't want these people that we are enslaved to be informed is because when they can read and when they can gain knowledge of their existence and their system, they'll want out of it. Then our power will be gone. Then they will seek power. Then they will seek wealth. They will seek material benefits for themselves. And that means I have to give away something. That means my power structure that I have built my entire, existence on crumbles. So that's why we have to keep them dumb. That's why we have to keep them away from this stuff. And so, sure, go ahead, teach that full history, but don't go, oh, slavery was some bad, people were whipped, but they learned some great songs, and look, they're all rappers today, so it's all good.
And we own them, even in that, even over there, we own the rappers. But look, because of us, they are what they are. But it's they want credit for every damn thing. No, how about you take credit for how you destroyed a lot of their lives and took away families, right? You how about you take credit for that? that. But no, they will not. How about when the Tulsa, Oklahoma people, you guys literally destroyed a community for what? For what reason? And that wasn't even so long ago. There are people who are still living from that, who lost family members, lost their homes, were displaced, right? Then and they just got denied reparations because America does not want to deal with that history. America doesn't want to talk about it.
Who was the school official that didn't want to use the word race when teaching about Black history? And then somebody asked him, like, well, how do you teach about the Tulsa race massacre? How do you teach history without using that word? And I can't remember what he said specifically, but the defense was just
Tulsa neighbor tickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
yeah.
fun.
It's more like, it's like, it's softer. It's like, we popped in town for a second.
Hey,
didn't like what we saw.
Bad. One of the few like Black communities that had built wealth for themselves was gone. Plus, everyone loves a new start. They just needed this. There's some of those people. There's like my family members who were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and like my family, we don't talk about this history because I don't know about like anyone else. But you get to a certain point, they're like, we just don't talk about that, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's around the same times that meets up. But hey. On the plus side, everyone just wants an opportunity to start fresh. Hey, they got to move out to California.
That's the talking point.
Palm tree beach life. Like, that is the direction it's going to. And it's great content. It's like very in a dark way for us. But it is now we have to fight against that. Like, now they're going to be dumbasses in chat going, well, hey, didn't they get a nice vacation? Some people went to California after Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's objectively
Meanwhile,
better.
there was a Tulsa, Oklahoma in California. If you talk about, they went to Florida, there was a Tulsa, Oklahoma situation in Florida. Every single state, right, multiple. And every single state, everywhere has had this, where there was an uprising of white folks inside of just because they didn't want them around. Black folks went and created their own communities, and that still wasn't enough. It still wasn't enough. They did not want them winning at all. It would always be that. And that's what we're fighting against. And that's what, like, it's not that, that, oh my gosh, we just hate all white people or whatever the case may be. I mean, we're sitting here on this programming right now, and it's Black and white folks.
Some of my best friends.
Yeah. So see, like, we it's not that we hate all white people, but the conversation needs to be had. So talk to your fellow friends, uncles, everybody else. Talk to them, because I'm sick of it. Right. I'm sick of it.
Also, to Rebecca, to your point, the only people who should be offended by teaching that white supremacy is bad is white supremacists, right? Like, why would anyone take insult to any of this to say?
Yeah, I don't get why people are offended by these conversations.
You're right.
Like,
it's just history. Like, to be offended by, would assume that you are in favor of such things. Like, why else would you be bothered by these discussions?
Yeah. They get bothered. They're like, oh my God, like, why are we talking about this? Like, I'm not even my mom or my dad. Well, girl, I didn't say that. See, this is what we're just talking about. We're just saying, like, let's help to push the conversation of basically, like, this is not facts and we should do something about it. Like, make sure that we're helping to, in our communities, if you are an educator too, fighting for that. Like, don't just be like, I don't know why we're still talking about this. That's not my fault. We're not saying it's your fault. It's not. But you have the ability and an upper hand over us who want to tell our own stories. So if you want to be an ally, that's how you can be an ally. But we'll see how this goes. I want to see what comes of it. We already know that people are fighting against it. I know Kamala Harris had spoken up about it. So I want to see what definitely comes of this. It's, it sucks, but you know how it is in Florida. When something happens in Florida, Texas want to do the same thing. Then Georgia wants to hop on the bandwagon.
Yeah,
and then we'll see that ripple effect. But we'll see how that goes.
You want to know one thing that
I'll just say it really fast. I have no hope in like Florida's government, but I have family from Florida. I know like regular ass people from Florida who just like don't speak up loudly enough from these times. Floridians are better than this. Y'all are wild, but y'all are better than this.
That's my people. I know. I know.
Yeah, Byron Donalds actually came out and condemned it. And he's defended Ron DeSantis before a lot, but he condemned it. And I saw Matt Walsh attacking him because he was using Kamala Harris talking points to condemn this, which is, I mean, fucking wild. But yeah, it's so Orwellian. And what frustrates me is that these are the people who say that anything that the left does is Orwellian. Like, this is textbook Orwell bullshit that you're
banning
doing.
the books. You're doing all the things. You're
banning the books. You're the one saying slavery is good. Go fuck yourselves. It's infuriating. Yeah, nobody should be outraged about this, as you said, Lance, unless they're a white supremacist. The person who I banned, who was getting a little bit triggered in the chat.
I used to see these kind of like argumentations, like maybe there was a benefit to slavery for slave stuff like that. You would only see that in Stormfront, in like, where they're doing weird revisionist history, trying to be like, well, did you know that it was black people who sold slaves to other white people and stuff? Like, you would only see that in white supremacist corners of the internet, and now it's becoming part of the fucking curriculum. It's becoming something that you're supposed to just like standardize. That's fucked up.
Like, we're trying to raise like apparently just a whole generation of white supremacists, and if we don't take action, it's going to get worse, So that's why, like, the education system in Florida is what he's going after, because he's planting these seeds now, hoping that they will grow into little white supremacist trees, and it's working. That's the horrifying part.
Not white supremacist trees. That's funny. But yes,
I don't like what they do with those trees.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's planting these seeds.
Fair point.